While millions of Americans are still trusting their family's safety to GM trucks and SUVs, a catastrophic engine failure crisis is silently spreading across highways nationwide. This isn't just another minor recall. It's a full-blown betrayal decades in the making. General Motors just announced a recall of nearly 600,000 full-size trucks and SUVs because their V8 engines can fail without warning, often at highway speeds, leaving families stranded in potentially life-threatening situations. But here's what the press release isn't telling you. These aren't worn-out workhorses with hundreds of thousands of miles. These are showroom-fresh vehicles, some with fewer than 10,000 miles, suddenly seizing up without warning. Owners are facing repair bills that can exceed $15,000. Dealerships are struggling to move inventory that once sold before it even hit the lot, and GM's reputation is crumbling in real time. This isn't just a mechanical failure, it's the collapse of an American icon that's been brewing for years behind closed doors at GM headquarters. What if I told you that the badge you've trusted most, the legendary GM V8 that powered everything from family Suburbans to Corvettes, has been engineered with a fatal flaw that GM executives have known about for years but desperately tried to hide? Meet Jason, a construction foreman from Texas who purchased a brand new Silverado just 6 months ago. I was driving my family home from a weekend trip when the engine started making this terrible knocking sound, he told us. Then within seconds, complete silence. The engine just died. There I was, stuck on the side of I-35 with my wife and kids, watching 18-wheelers fly by inches from our vehicle. The truck had less than 12,000 miles on it. When Jason finally got his Silverado to the dealership, the news was devastating. Catastrophic engine failure requiring a complete replacement. The cost? Over $14,000. The cause? Failed connecting rod bearings. A problem the service manager admitted they'd been seeing more often than they'd like to admit. But here's what GM doesn't want you to know. Their solution to this crisis isn't a proper fix at all. They're telling affected owners to switch from the factory-recommended 0W20 oil to a thicker 0W40, a band-aid measure that might just keep engines running long enough to get past their warranty period before failing anyway. And the most shocking part? Internal documents suggest GM has known about these connecting rod and crankshaft issues for years, but chose to keep building and selling these engines rather than addressing the fundamental design flaws. So what's really happening inside these GM V8 engines, and why are they failing so catastrophically with so little warning? The answer requires looking beyond the corporate press releases and sanitized recall notices to understand the perfect storm of engineering compromises, cost-cutting measures, and corporate denial that created this crisis. For decades, GM's V8 engines were the gold standard of American automotive engineering. Powerful, reliable workhorses that could run for hundreds of thousands of miles with basic maintenance. They were the beating heart of America's most trusted trucks and SUVs, a symbol of dependability so strong that entire families would buy nothing else for generations. But something changed in recent years. As pressure mounted to improve fuel economy while maintaining power output, GM's engineers made a series of critical design decisions that would ultimately compromise the legendary durability these engines were known for. What we're seeing in these failed engines reveals a disturbing pattern, explains Michael Torres, an independent engine rebuilder with 30 years of experience working on GM power plants. The connecting rod bearings show signs of premature wear and scoring, damage that shouldn't occur until hundreds of thousands of miles, not 10 or 20,000. Torres isn't alone in his assessment. Mechanics across the country report finding similar damage patterns when tearing down failed GM V8s, scored connecting rod bearings, damaged crankshaft journals, and metal debris throughout the oil system. The engineering explanation is complex but reveals a fundamental weakness. The modern GM V8s operate under extreme loads, with connecting rods, crankshafts, and bearing surfaces enduring the constant pounding of combustion, while delivering the power and torque truck owners expect. These components rely on a constant film of oil to prevent metal-on-metal contact. The margin for error in these engines has become razor-thin, explains Dr. Robert Williams, a mechanical engineering professor specializing in powertrain design. Any disruption to oil flow or quality, even momentary, can lead to bearing damage that quickly cascades into catastrophic failure. This vulnerability becomes even more pronounced in trucks and SUVs, where heavy loads and towing put additional strain on the engine. The combination of these stresses with potentially inadequate bearing design or materials creates a perfect storm for premature failure. But the engineering issues only tell part of the story. The more troubling aspect is how GM has responded to these failures, and what that response reveals about their priorities. The oil viscosity controversy. GM's first response to the growing crisis wasn't a recall or a comprehensive repair program. Instead, they quietly began advising some owners to change their oil specification from the factory-filled 0W20 to a thicker 0W40 grade. On the surface, this seems like a straightforward fix. Thicker oil provides better protection at higher temperatures and under heavy loads, potentially reducing wear on critical components like connecting rod bearings. But for many owners and industry experts, this recommendation raised serious red flags. 0W20 oil isn't just a random choice, explains Sarah Johnson, an automotive engineer who previously worked for a major oil company. Modern automakers select specific oil viscosities to meet stringent fuel economy and emissions targets. Switching to a thicker oil can improve durability, but it also impacts fuel efficiency and could affect emissions compliance. This creates a troubling scenario. GM designed and certified these vehicles with one oil specification to meet federal fuel economy standards, then later recommended a different specification when problems emerged, essentially admitting the original design couldn't perform reliably with the specified oil. It's like selling you a race car and then telling you to fill it with regular gas instead of premium after you've already bought it, says Johnson. It might prevent immediate catastrophic failure, but it's changing the fundamental operating parameters the vehicle was designed and marketed under. Even more concerning is the possibility that this oil change recommendation is merely a stopgap measure, one designed to extend engine life just enough to get vehicles past their warranty period, but not necessarily to ensure long-term reliability. Richard Martinez, who runs an independent GM specialty repair shop, puts it bluntly. In my 30 years working on these engines, I've never seen a manufacturer change oil recommendations like this unless there's a fundamental design issue they're trying to work around. This isn't fixing the problem, it's delaying the inevitable. This controversy speaks to a deeper issue plaguing not just GM, but much of the automotive industry. The tension between meeting increasingly stringent fuel economy regulations while maintaining the power, performance, and reliability customers expect. When those competing priorities clash, something has to give, and in this case, it appears to be engine durability. The dealership nightmare. While owners grapple with failed engines and uncertain futures, GM dealerships are facing their own crisis as the fallout spreads beyond repair bays to showroom floors. It's a completely different atmosphere than 6 months ago, says Thomas, a sales manager at a large GM dealership in the Midwest who asked that we not use his last name. Back then, we couldn't keep trucks on the lot. They'd sell before they even arrived. Now we have rows of them sitting unsold, and customers are walking in asking specifically about the engine problems they're hearing about. This shift in consumer sentiment is having tangible financial impacts. According to industry data, average discounts on affected GM trucks and SUVs have nearly doubled in recent months as dealers struggle to move inventory. Models that once commanded prices above MSRP are now selling well below sticker, and even those discounts aren't enough to maintain previous sales volumes. We're seeing people who have bought nothing but GM for decades suddenly cross-shopping Ram and Ford. Thomas continues. When you lose a lifetime customer, you're not just losing one sale, you're losing all their future purchases and probably their children's purchases too. The long-term damage is incalculable. The situation is particularly dire for smaller rural dealerships where full-size trucks and SUVs represent the majority of their business. Some report sales declines of 30% or more for models equipped with the affected V8 engines. This isn't just about profits, it's about survival, explains automotive retail analyst Jennifer Williams. Many smaller dealerships operate on thin margins and rely heavily on service department revenue. When sales drop this dramatically and the manufacturer's reputation is damaged, it puts tremendous financial pressure on these businesses. This pressure extends to the service departments as well, where the surge in engine-related warranty work has created backlogs and part shortages. Some dealers report wait times of weeks or even months for replacement engines, leaving customers without their vehicles for extended periods. We're doing everything we can to take care of our customers, says Mark, a service manager at a GM dealership in Texas. But there are only so many loaner vehicles and replacement engines available. It's a nightmare trying to explain to someone who just spent $60,000 on a new truck that they might not get it back for 2 months. The ripple effects of these dealership challenges are spreading throughout local economies, particularly in communities where these businesses are major employers and tax contributors. Each unsold truck represents lost commissions for salespeople, reduced hours for service technicians, and decreased revenue for supporting businesses, from parts suppliers to the local restaurants where dealership employees eat lunch. The courtroom battle. As engines fail and owners face massive repair bills, the legal system has become the new battleground in the GM V8 crisis. Class action lawsuits have been filed across the country, alleging that GM knowingly sold vehicles with defective engines and failed to disclose known issues to consumers. These lawsuits paint a damning picture of corporate negligence, claiming that GM was aware of the connecting rod and crankshaft problems long before the recent recall, but chose to continue selling affected vehicles without addressing the underlying defects. The evidence suggests a pattern of deliberate concealment, says attorney Michael Davis, who represents owners in one of the class actions. Our clients purchased these vehicles believing they were getting GM's legendary reliability. Instead, they got engines that failed catastrophically with minimal warning, often just after the warranty expired. The legal complaints detail not just the financial harm to owners, repair costs, lost wages, transportation expenses, but also the potential safety risks. Engines that fail suddenly at highway speeds create dangerous situations for both the vehicle occupants and others on the road. This isn't just about getting money back for repairs, Davis continues. It's about holding GM accountable for putting profits ahead of safety and consumer trust. Our clients want assurance that this won't happen again, and that means forcing fundamental changes in how GM designs, tests, and stands behind its engines. GM's legal team has responded with procedural defenses and arguments that they've acted responsibly by issuing recalls and service bulletins. They maintain that the majority of their vehicles perform as intended and that failures represent a small percentage of total production. But for owners caught in the middle, these legal battles represent more than just potential financial compensation. They're about validation, acknowledgement that their experiences weren't isolated incidents or the result of abuse or neglect, but symptoms of a larger systemic problem. I just want them to admit there's something fundamentally wrong with these engines, says Robert, a Sierra owner whose engine failed at 37,000 miles. The dealership tried to blame me, suggesting I must have towed too much or skipped oil changes. But I babied that truck, followed every maintenance recommendation to the letter. This isn't owner error, it's a defective product. The outcome of these legal challenges could have far-reaching implications not just for GM, but for the entire automotive industry. Substantial settlements or judgments could force manufacturers to prioritize long-term reliability over short-term profits and regulatory compliance, potentially reshaping how engines are designed, tested, and warranted. The stock market verdict. Wall Street has delivered its own harsh judgment on GM's handling of the V8 crisis, with investors increasingly concerned about both the immediate financial impact and the long-term damage to the company's reputation and market position. In the days following news of widespread engine failures and the subsequent recall announcement, GM's stock price experienced volatility that translated into billions in lost market capitalization. For a company of GM's size, even a modest percentage decline represents staggering sums. Investors are looking beyond the immediate recall cost, which are substantial but manageable, explains financial analyst Robert Thompson. They're concerned about the potential long-term erosion of GM's market share in their most profitable segment, full-size trucks and SUVs, and the possible impact on future model launches. This investor anxiety is well-founded. The profit margins on full-size trucks and SUVs are significantly higher than on passenger cars, making them critical to GM's overall financial health. Any sustained decline in this segment could have outsized effects on the company's bottom line. The timing of this crisis is particularly challenging for GM, which, like other major automakers, is navigating a complex transition toward electrification that requires massive capital investment. Resources diverted to address the V8 problems, whether for warranty repairs, legal settlements, or engineering fixes, are resources unavailable for future development. GM is essentially fighting a two-front war, notes Thompson. They're trying to manage this immediate crisis with their core product while simultaneously investing billions in their electric future. It's an extraordinarily difficult balancing act, and investors are understandably nervous about their ability to execute successfully on both fronts. The market's reaction also reflects concerns about potential regulatory consequences. If investigations by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration (NHTSA) determine that GM failed to report known safety defects in a timely manner, the company could face substantial fines beyond the direct costs of repairs and settlements. For long-term investors and retirement funds with significant GM holdings, these uncertainties create difficult decisions. The stock has historically been viewed as a relatively stable blue-chip investment with reliable dividend payments, an image now threatened by the ongoing engine crisis. We're seeing institutional investors reduce their positions or implement hedging strategies to protect against further downside risk, says Thompson. The concern isn't necessarily that GM can't weather this storm, but rather that the combination of recall costs, potential legal liabilities, and market share losses could impact performance for several years to come. The trust collapse. Beyond the financial and legal ramifications, perhaps the most devastating aspect of the GM V8 crisis is the erosion of consumer trust in what was once among America's most respected automotive brand. For decades, GM's V8 engines represented more than just mechanical components. They were cultural icons, symbols of American engineering excellence and reliability. Generations of families bought GM trucks and SUVs based on this reputation, passing brand loyalty from parent to child, along with stories of engines that just wouldn't quit. That hard-earned trust is now evaporating at an alarming rate. "I've owned nothing but Chevy trucks for 30 years, says Michael, a contractor from Pennsylvania. "My dad drove them, my grandfather drove them. I've got over 300,000 miles on my 2010 Silverado with the original engine. But this new one failed at 26,000 miles. I'll never buy another GM product again, and I've told everyone I know know to stay away too. This sentiment is echoed across owner forums, social media groups, and review sites where once loyal customers express feelings of betrayal that go beyond mere dissatisfaction with a product. For many, it's personal, a breach of faith in a relationship built over decades. It's not just about the money, although $14,000 for a new engine isn't trivial, explains consumer psychology expert Dr. Lisa Martinez. It's about identity. Many GM owners, particularly truck and SUV buyers, incorporated brand loyalty into their self-image. When that brand lets them down in such a spectacular way, it feels like a personal betrayal. This trust collapse extends beyond individual consumers to fleet buyers, commercial users, and rental companies, segments where GM has traditionally maintained strong positions. These business customers, who often purchase vehicles by the hundreds or thousands, are particularly sensitive to reliability issues that could impact their operations. We're hearing from fleet managers who are pausing or canceling orders pending resolution of the engine issues, says commercial vehicle analyst Thomas Wilson. For businesses that depend on their vehicles for daily operations, the risk of widespread failures is simply unacceptable. One breakdown might be bad luck, but a pattern suggests a deeper problem. The trust erosion is spreading geographically as well. The same V8 engines power vehicles sold in Canada, Australia, the Middle East, and parts of South America, markets where GM has worked for decades to build credibility and market share. Global reputation is incredibly fragile in the age of social media and instant communication, notes international business consultant Sarah Lawrence. A viral video of a failed engine in Dubai or Sydney can undo years of marketing investment overnight, and international consumers often have even less brand loyalty than Americans. They'll switch without hesitation if they perceive a reliability risk. For GM, rebuilding the shattered trust will require more than just fixing the immediate engineering problems. It will demand transparency, accountability, and a demonstrated commitment to quality that goes beyond marketing slogans and promotional campaigns. The rivals seize their moment. As GM struggles with the fallout from its V8 crisis, competitors are moving aggressively to capitalize on the opportunity, launching targeted campaigns aimed squarely at wavering GM customers. Ford and Ram, GM's primary rivals in the crucial full-size truck segment, have wasted little time in highlighting their own powertrain's reliability while offering special incentives specifically for GM owners considering a switch. We're seeing unprecedented conquest bonuses from Ford and Ram, reveals automotive marketing analyst Jennifer Williams. They're offering additional trade-in value for GM vehicles, waiving certain fees, and creating comparison materials that explicitly address the V8 failures without naming GM directly. Phrases like engines you can trust and proven reliability when it matters most. This competitive response goes beyond traditional marketing. Dealerships for rival brands are actively reaching out to known GM owners in their areas, particularly those with models affected by the recall, offering private showings and personalized test drives away from the pressure of the showroom environment. It's like watching sharks circle when there's blood in the water, says Williams. Ford and Ram recognize that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to convert loyal GM customers who might otherwise never have considered switching brands. The strategy appears to be working. Industry data shows that conquest sales, purchases by customers trading in a competitor's vehicle, have increased significantly for both Ford and Ram in markets where GM has traditionally dominated. Toyota and Nissan are also benefiting, particularly with buyers who are now considering alternatives beyond American brands. Toyota's reputation for reliability makes it an especially attractive option for former GM loyalists who prioritize dependability above all else. The Tundra and Sequoia are seeing interest from demographics that previously wouldn't have considered Japanese alternatives to their GM trucks and SUVs, notes industry analyst Robert Kelly. Toyota's conservative approach to engineering changes and their emphasis on long-term durability over maximum power or efficiency is resonating with buyers who feel burned by GM's issues. Even more concerning for GM's long-term prospects is the impact on younger buyers who haven't yet established strong brand loyalty. These consumers, raised in an era of online reviews and social media, are particularly sensitive to reliability concerns and often make purchasing decisions based on reputation rather than tradition. The damage GM is sustaining with first-time truck and SUV buyers could haunt them for decades, warns Kelly. If your first experience with a brand is hearing about catastrophic engine failures, that impression will likely influence your purchasing decisions for years to come, even after the specific issues have been resolved. The road ahead, GM's existential choice. As the V8 crisis continues to unfold, GM faces what may be the most consequential decision in the company's recent history: how to address not just the immediate engineering problems, but the fundamental questions about their approach to powertrain development and corporate transparency. Inside the company's engineering departments and executive suites, intense debates are underway about the path forward. Multiple sources familiar with these discussions describe several potential scenarios, each with profound implications for GM's future. One approach calls for a comprehensive redesign of the affected V8 engines, incorporating more robust components, wider engineering tolerances, and exhaustive real-world testing before release. This would represent a return to GM's traditional emphasis on durability, potentially at the expense of maximum fuel efficiency or power output. There's a growing recognition within certain parts of GM that they've pushed the engineering envelope too far in pursuit of fuel economy numbers, says a source with knowledge of the internal discussions. Some veteran engineers have been arguing for years that the margins of safety were becoming too thin, but those concerns were often overruled by regulatory compliance priorities. A more radical option would accelerate GM's transition away from traditional V8 engines toward alternative powertrains, smaller turbocharged engines, hybrids, or full electrification. This approach would effectively concede the traditional V8 market to competitors while positioning GM as a forward-looking company focused on future technologies rather than fixing legacy problems. The question they're wrestling with is whether it's better to try to save the V8's reputation or to let it go and focus resources elsewhere, explains automotive industry consultant Dr. James Oliver. It's an emotionally charged debate because the V8 is so central to GM's identity and history, particularly in their truck lineup. Corporate restructuring is also on the table, with proposals for overhauling quality control processes, creating more accountability in engineering decisions, and establishing greater transparency with customers when problems emerge. There's a recognition that the culture needs to change, says a former GM executive who left the company recently. The old approach of minimizing issues, delaying recalls, and hoping problems will blow over simply doesn't work in today's connected world where owners can share experiences instantly. The stakes couldn't be higher. GM's competitors aren't standing still, and the window for regaining lost trust narrows with each passing day. A bold, decisive response could potentially transform this crisis into an opportunity for renewal and recommitment to quality. Hesitation or half measures, however, risk permanent damage to the company's most valuable asset, its reputation. This is GM's Tylenol moment, says crisis management expert Sarah Thompson, referencing Johnson & Johnson's famous handling of the 1982 tampering crisis. They can either follow that example with complete transparency and a no-excuses approach to making things right, or they can become a business school case study in how not to handle a product crisis. For a company with more than a century of history and hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide, the choice they make will reverberate far beyond the engineering labs or boardroom. It will ultimately determine whether the GM badge continues to represent American automotive excellence or becomes a symbol of corporate priorities gone wrong. The choice is yours. Remember what I said at the beginning? While millions of Americans are still trusting their family's safety to GM trucks and SUVs, a catastrophic engine failure crisis is silently spreading across highways nationwide. This isn't just another minor recall, it's a full-blown betrayal decades in the making. Now you understand the full picture. You've seen how GM's legendary V8 engines, once the gold standard of American automotive engineering, are failing catastrophically with minimal warning, often with just a fraction of the mileage owners expect. You know about their band-aid fix of changing oil viscosity instead of addressing the underlying design flaws. And you've witnessed how this crisis is affecting everything from dealership sales to global trust in one of America's most iconic companies. This isn't just about connecting rods and crankshafts, it's about corporate priorities, engineering compromises, and what happens when a company that built its reputation on reliability starts cutting corners. The consequences are playing out in real time on highways, in repair shops, in courtrooms, and on Wall Street. So what does this mean for you? If you're one of the 600,000 owners of a GM vehicle with the affected V8 engines, the recall notice should be arriving soon, but don't wait for it. Contact your dealer immediately to have your engine inspected. And regardless of what they tell you, consider switching to the recommended heavier oil as a precautionary measure, even if it means slightly reduced fuel economy. If you're considering purchasing a GM truck or SUV, proceed with extreme caution. Ask specific questions about what has been done to address the engine issues, get any promises in writing, and consider models with alternative powertrains not affected by the current problems. And if you're simply a concerned observer of American manufacturing and corporate accountability, watch closely how GM responds in the coming months. Their actions, not their words, will tell you everything you need to know about what they truly value. Hit subscribe now and turn on notifications. This story is still unfolding, and our next update could save you from a roadside breakdown or a financial disaster. Share this video with anyone you know who drives or is considering a GM vehicle with a V8. They deserve to know what they're really getting under the hood. Are you a GM owner who's experienced these engine problems? Or have you switched to a competitor because of reliability concerns? Tell us your story in the comments below. Your experience could help others make informed decisions about their next vehicle purchase. Remember, in today's automotive world, information isn't just power, it's safety on the road and money in your bank account.